Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Dominic Aiello, Marketing Manager here at Kershaw, and I'm excited to be joined by Hailie Deegan. Welcome, Hailie, and thanks for being with us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, Hailie, this past year was your first rookie season or your rookie season in NASCAR Truck Series. I hadn't watched NASCAR in many years, but I had a really good time watching you this past season. How would you say that your rookie season went?
I would say it had its fair shares of ups and downs, but I'd say we made really good progress throughout the year. Trucks are tough. Trucks are very tough. And there's a lot of competitive people out there in the truck series, a lot of good equipment. And so makes it tough for that progress to be very big. But I feel like just from the beginning of the year, towards the end of the year for myself, I feel like I learned so much, and I feel like it showed on the track also.
Right on. Well, before we talk more about racing, because I want to talk a lot more about that, I'm curious to hear what your favorite Kershaw is.
Ooh, man. I think back when we did the custom ones for me, that custom ones that we did for the giveaway, those ones were by far, I forget what the style name was on those ones, but I know that I use that one religiously more than any of the other ones.
Yeah, I think if I recall correctly, it was the black leak, and then we put your HD logo on the handle.
Yep, that was it. I love that one. I think it's just the point of me having my logo on it that makes me love it even more.
Oh, for sure. And the leak, I mean, the leak's been around for so long. It's such a great and popular model that it's hard to go wrong with that one.
A great staple, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, obviously you're an ambassador for Kershaw, but were you a fan of Kershaw before you came on board? Did you carry a pocket knife regularly?
I did, always. I feel like that's something that you need a lot, whether you're around cars, just being able to like cut zip ties off, different things like that. They're always coming in handy. And I noticed after I kind of like announced that I was with you guys and ambassador for you guys, that a lot of the guys in the race shop, the race team that I raced for, were also had a bunch of Kershaw knives. Everyone did. That's like their knife that everyone had. And so it was cool to see that also.
Right on. Yeah, I can imagine they hear that. They're like, oh, I've been carrying Kershaw forever. Look, and I've got this one.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. You know, I'm a big outdoors person myself, fishing, hunting, crabbing, all of it. So even before I joined the Kershaw team, I carried a pocket knife pretty much every day. But, you know, there's a lot of reasons outside of being an outdoorsy person to carry one. What would you say to your fans that don't currently carry a pocket knife?
I would say that it's one of those like almost necessities that you need, that it just comes in handy whenever you need to be able to do something that's kind of like hands-on. I feel like there's so many situations you're like, oh man, I need to do this. And you're sitting there for 30 minutes fidgeting with something, trying to get it apart. Like they're just always one of those handy products that you should really have.
For sure. Absolutely. That's a great point. Well, there's a ton of daily tasks that, you know, a knife just makes easier, right? So, okay, well, let's get back to racing. Your dad, Brian Deegan, I remember watching him when I was younger in the X Games. He had a hugely successful career. Did you always know that you were going to follow in his footsteps and be a racer? How, you know, what brought you down this path?
I mean, I honestly had no clue. My parents didn't really have any clue. It kind of just all started back when I was turning 8 years old. My dad just made the transition from freestyle motocross to off-road trucks. And I was never really like a dirt bike girl. Like I didn't really ride dirt bikes growing up. I did a little bit, but not like, it wasn't what I loved. And after my dad started racing off-road trucks, that's when I started seeing these other kids my age and a little bit older racing these like mini off-road trucks. It's pretty much just a smaller version of what my dad was racing. And so I saw those kids doing it and I was like, I have to do it. Like, I want to do this so bad. And my parents ended up getting me an off-road truck for my 8th birthday. And ever since then, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the racing aspect, being able to be there with my family and it being like a family sport for me because I was there anyway, but being able to do like the same thing that my dad was so cool to me at that age.
For sure. I bet. At what point, and maybe you've just hit there, maybe you feel that that's a ways off, but at what point did you start to feel that your career was coming together and you were about to be on a big stage like, you know, the NASCAR Truck Series?
Oh man, I don't think that like I've even hit that point where it's just like, yeah, we're here. I'd say because there's always something I'm working towards, a goal that I'm trying to accomplish. And so it makes it very tough to have that one moment where you're like, this is it.
For sure. Understandable. And yeah, I mean, you're so early in your career. The sky's the limit at this point, right?
Yeah, I got goals. I got a lot of goals and things that I want to accomplish. So it makes it tough because there's not just like an exact list of the things that I want to do, because I feel like there's always stuff getting added to that list and changed and kind of transitioned.
For sure. For sure. Well, the first race of this season, you were at Daytona International Speedway, which in my mind is probably one of the most iconic speedways in North America. You were ninth on the grid, which is a great spot, your very first race. What was going through your head when you were on the starting grid there, before you started racing?
Going back to that last question, though, I would say that was kind of one of the more so, if I had one of those moments, was me racing at Daytona back in 2020 in the ARCA series. That was one of those moments where I was like, man, like we're on a big stage right now. Like racing at Daytona itself is a bucket list item for, I think, any racer. And so I feel like that was definitely one of those moments. But going back to this year, in the truck series, it was wild. I didn't really know what to expect. We went out there. We did have a little bit of practice, thank God, because Daytona is a lot to attack, especially when you're driving a truck for the first time, for the first time on a super speedway. It makes it tough because you don't know what to expect. You have people telling you, like outside sources, of what you should feel and what it should feel like, but you don't really know. You don't truly know going into it. So I was super glad we got practice. We got qualifying there. But going into the race, the most dramatic thing and the most like shocking thing to me was how sensitive they were to air, how aerosensitive it was. And that it's crazy because you could be holding the wheel straight, but you're bouncing back and forth between lanes. And you have to almost predict where the truck is going to be before it ends up there. That's the hardest part.
Wow. And so just to expand on what you mean by aero, so like if you're following another truck versus being in clean air with no truck in front of you, the truck's reacting differently.
Yes. So it's a big battle of air in the truck series. The best way that I explain it is, if you're ever on the freeway and you feel a semi next to you and you notice your car just kind of get like a little, like kind of like swerves lanes, not lanes, but just swerves a little bit, and you can feel it. It's like that magnified by like 100. Oh, wow. And so like every little thing, whether you're six inches from the truck next to you or a foot, it's a totally different feel. And being behind someone, it's like having a lot of air just being pushed on that front truck. And if you're really close to that front truck behind, or that you're behind, you don't get as much air, so your truck's going to get a lot lighter because it lacks downforce.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's confusing. I try to describe it in the best and like easiest way possible, but air is a tough thing to explain because you can't see it.
Sure, for sure. Unless you're in, the wind tunnel and you have, don't they color the air so you can see it in a wind tunnel?
I have never been to the wind tunnel. I don't think drivers, or there's like a specific amount of people that can go, so they've never let me there before.
Gotcha. Or they add smoke or something to the air so you can see the aerodynamics there. But I mean that's such a great everyday way to explain it though. This passing a semi truck, I think that's really relatable. Everybody can understand that quick force of air kind of shifting the car around, and doing that at the speeds that you're doing in NASCAR. That probably a pretty incredible and scary moment the first time you come across that.
It is. It for sure is I won't even say scary. It's just kind of sketchy. Sure. Like you're like, oh, what is that? And you're like trying to learn all these new things and new feelings. And it becomes a lot of information to like grasp and hold on to. And it changes every track. So that's even the harder part, is when you go to these certain tracks, some aren't as aerosensitive as others. So there's like certain degrees you kind of have to calculate it to. So it makes it a little more difficult. And that's something new that I had to really learn this year. Sure.
That makes sense. It's always a learning process, right? Well, you mentioned early on, there were some frustrations this season. So on that note, something that was probably out of your control and frustrating is, I think we have a clip of a crash from this year. Let's go ahead and show that to the viewers real quick, and then maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah, that crash was absolutely probably one of the hardest hits that I've had racing in general. There was one other moment that was a pretty hard hit for me, but that one right there really hurt because it was like a double hit. Like you got hit by the other truck and then I hit the wall. And so that one definitely rattled my cage a little bit, but it didn't necessarily hurt after. It was just like in the moment, it was like, ugh, it like takes your breath away.
Sure.
But I kind of paid for it in the aftermath. Like the next day, my body like was in so much pain, just like sore. I like crawled down the stairs. I was like, I feel like I am dying right now.
No.
But it wasn't like one specific part of me. And then also I noticed because I hit my head so hard, I didn't have a concussion or anything, but my eye started to swell up. And so like I've paid for it in a couple like different ways. I feel like not necessarily like something that was broken right there in the moment.
Sure. I mean, it's understandable that you would just feel bruised all over and sore just because, you know,
just internal pain.
Yeah. But, you know,
Yeah.
aside from that, in that moment, obviously that, at least to me as a viewer, it seemed like that was kind of a blindside. You didn't expect that was about to happen. So, you know, when the other truck impacted you and then you see that yourself going towards the wall, what kind of is going through your head at that point? Are you preparing for the impact or are you trying to slow down?
I saw them just like a couple laps before. Everyone was being super aggressive. It was towards the end of the race. Bristol is always known for stuff like that. And I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And so when that did happen, I was behind the guy, I think, who actually hit him a little bit. I don't know if they touched completely or what exactly happened, or he cut across his nose, because all I saw was the angle that I was in, the in-car from me. But I was right behind him and I see the number 16 shoot down towards the wall. And I was like, maybe he'll pass that kind of pit road wall and hit the next one and slow down by then. But he just barely hit the pit road wall, just barely. Like he would have probably like just hit the inside wall later in the corner. If he just missed that and been fine, nothing probably would have happened from there. But he hit that pit road wall. And so that shot him immediately up the track. But I didn't really have a choice, because if I would have locked up the brakes and he didn't like kind of come across the track, then I would have looked like the bad one and everyone would have ran into me and then I would have caused another wreck. And so it was just kind of hard to gauge. And I think I still made the right decision, because I don't think I was going to miss him either way. I was either going to miss him and maybe after the fact of him coming up the track, but I feel like if I would have slowed down, I would have got to him like later and him coming back down the track. So there was so many like different scenarios, like if scenarios that could have changed the situation. But that one, I just unlucky timing, I guess.
That's part of racing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It really is. Timing is everything, and being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I feel like we've had our fair share of this year.
Well, you know, obviously racing has inherent risks. I think most drivers accept that. That's part of what you do, right? But are you ever scared in that moment, or is it just something that you accept as normal at this point?
I wouldn't say scared, but there's moments that you're very aware of what's going on. Like at Talladega was kind of a moment for me. And like I wasn't scared, but being at Talladega, all you are is making laps and just trying to stay as close as possible to the guy in front of you until a crash happens. Like, you know, you're just waiting for something to happen. You're not really racing. Like, there's not like huge moves that happen. You're just kind of all in a train. And then you're just waiting for a crash to happen. And so that's one moment you're like kind of just sitting there and you're like, it's been a while, or, we're coming to like a stage break or towards the end of the race. And you're like, it's going to happen soon. And you know, it's probably going to be in front of you or close behind you. So you're tightening your belts. I'm tightening my belts, at least on the back straightaway. I'm like, you see them start kind of shifting out of lanes. And that's when you know it's really getting close to that time, is when they start moving around. So I'm tightening my belts with like my one hand real quick, because I know something's about to happen. And it does at Talladega. That is just Talladega.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Well, switching to a lighter note, what's your pre-race preparation like? Do you have any rituals that you go through, or good luck charms that you make sure you always have on you? Tell us a little bit about that.
There's a lot of racers that have that. And I was never like that growing up. My dad wasn't like that. And so I don't really have anything, to be honest. I would say just intake caffeine. I would say I love caffeine. I'm a caffeine addict. And that's one thing. I always feel a lot more hyped before a race if I drink like an energy drink. So I say that's the only thing. I try to eat a little bit before the race, just so I'm not sluggish at all. But I would say those are kind of the main things. Usually I'm so busy at the racetrack that I don't really like have an opportunity to have like a set system. So I just do the best I can.
Right on.
Mhm.
Well, you know, as someone that's never been able to go 180 miles per hour and bump other cars on a racetrack, what's it like going from that situation and then, you know, driving home or being in a car in traffic? Do you get more frustrated now just in an everyday car?
I am more scared to drive on the road than I am racing. And it's the fact of there's people who have never raced in their life, have no experience racing, who just are driving normally. Like there's been so many situations where I've almost gotten in car crashes because of other people doing something. And like, thank God I'm aware and have reactions like from racing. And same with my boyfriend also. To where like it was last week, I was headed to the Ford simulator and some guy, there was no intersection, nothing, just pulled out into the middle of the road from just a little turnoff, like side turnoff from a parking lot. And I'm going like 50 down this road. And that's like the speed you were supposed to be going. Like that was the speed limit. And he just pulls in the middle of the road and stops. And like I was inches, I locked up my brakes in my Mustang and I was inches away from hitting this guy on his driver door. And so that's like he literally came out of nowhere. And like, that's something that I can't control. So it scares me so much more knowing that there's like people on the road who don't have like those instincts or anything. So I've been lucky. I feel like I've gotten out of situations because of racing where like someone will just lock up the brakes in front of you. And instead of just locking up the brakes and going straight into the person, hoping that you slow down, you turn off to the side. And like, those are little things I'm thankful for. But like, man, people on the road scare me.
I mean, and that's a good point. I didn't think about it like that because, right, you know, when you're on the racetrack, yes, you're doing high speeds, but you are in cars that are meant to be able to safely crash if that's what happens. But you're also on the road with people that are just as well trained as you are, you know, versus on the road, you have no idea what the person around you is doing.
At all. And so like, that's one thing that like, I've kind of trained myself now to, if there's a choice between like, oh, I wonder if they're going to pull out into the intersection or not, just expect them to go with the not smart one. And it usually is true. And you're safe either way.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. One more fun question, then we'll get back to series. Do you have a favorite racing based movie that, you know, you've loved since you were growing up or maybe even in adulthood, like Herbie Fully Loaded, Days of Thunder, Cars? I know one of mine was Talladega Nights.
You know, I've never watched Days of Thunder. I need to. That's like one movie that like I haven't had time to, but I want to. And here I've seen so many little scenes from it that like I feel like I know what the movie is about and like the storyline, but I really like haven't watched the full movie. But I would say that movie for me, probably Talladega Nights. Out of any of them, I feel like I've watched that the most, and it's just like one of those core racing movies that's just so funny.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Days of Thunder is one of my favorites growing up as from a racing standpoint. And I think one of my most iconic or favorite lines from there is Rubbin's Racing, and I feel like that's so iconic in the truck series too, because you're always kind of bumping and rubbing with the other trucks.
Always. That is just the name of the game in the truck series.
Yeah. All right. Well, what does 2022 look for you? What are you excited about? What's your goal? Where are you headed?
Yeah, 2022. It's going to be fun. I'm having a lot of cool things planned with racing. I'm kind of still finishing up some contracts, and it's hard because you're still in the year before, and you'd be surprised. A lot of racing contracts don't get done till a year of racing. But my goal is to be back racing full-time the truck series. And then also I have a micro sprint that just got done. It's like a dirt circle track car. It's pretty much just like a sprint car, a little bit smaller. And so I am racing that also, and I've started racing that this year, towards the end of this year, and I'm going to be racing that through next year. I might be doing some more road course racing with Ford in the IMSA series. So I think we have a lot planned all over the schedule on the racing side of things.
That's awesome. Sounds like there's a lot of options, you know, available if one path doesn't work out.
not many time slots get left open for next year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I know you may not have an exact answer for this based on what we just talked about, how many different options are on the table potentially, but do you have a major goal you're chasing? What would make you be able to look back at, you know, say 10 years from now and be like, you know, I can't believe I accomplished that. That was incredible. Is that the Cup Series? Is that something else?
I mean, to look back in 10 years, who knows? My goal is to make it to the Cup Series. Whether I make it to there or not, which I really hope I do, that's the plan. I think that I might still be racing in the Cup Series by that time. I don't know. I love racing so much. I enjoy it so much. I feel like it's not a part of my life. It is my life. And I don't know what I'd do without it.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. Like I said, I'm really outdoorsy, and if you take that out of my equation, I'm like, what would I do? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, you feel like you have no purpose after that. You're like, well, what am I supposed to do with my life?
Exactly. So I totally understand. But yeah, I think, you know, the Cup Series, you know, as a racer, I think that would be something special. If that's not where you end up somewhere else, I'm sure you'll find something where you'll thrive at and be able to look back and think that you did something great. You're already on that path.
I sure hope so, because I'm going to be pretty depressed if I don't make it to the Cup Series. That's like my life goal. I'm going to feel like I failed at life if I didn't.
Yeah, I understand that. Although I don't think that would be the case. I understand.
I'm sure I'd find something else, but I don't want to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, back to knives for a few minutes. Have you had a chance to look at the new models for 2022? Is there anything that's got you excited that you're looking forward to receiving?
Oh man, I have quite the range of knife collections over the years, or over this year, that you guys have sent me. So with all the new models coming out, I'd say I really like, you can like it from the outside, the aesthetics of it, but I really like testing them myself. And I feel like that's what truly makes like my favorite. What makes my favorite knife is like how it looks, but also how versatile it is and how it works great with what I'm doing. So I feel like every knife is personalized to what the person is doing and what their needs are for it. So I think I need to be sent those by you guys first, so I can tell you guys.
For sure. You make a great point, because, we make such a wide range of knives, handle size, handle shape, blade shape, all these different elements that go into a knife really make it, thrive at certain tasks versus others that it might struggle in, as well as making it personal to you, what your preference is and size of blades, things like that. So I totally get that. And we'll make sure we get out the new lineup to you here real quick.
Perfect. I can't wait for them.
Well, we're just about out of time, but if anyone is listening that maybe is a fan of yours, or it's new to Kershaw or new to knives, and they're maybe hesitant to own or carry a pocket knife on a daily basis because maybe they think that there's a stigma that it's a weapon or it's intimidating, what would you say to them? What would you say that may encourage them to be a little bit more relaxed about being able to carry a knife every day?
I would say when you're in your industry, I feel like there's always a need for a knife to have on you. It's so easy and versatile, and it's very easy to have with you because of the size. They're very convenient. It's very convenient at the end of the day. And it's almost like a why not scenario. Like there's really no negatives in it. Like, okay, you have to carry around a knife that's about this big in your pocket. Most of the time you already have plenty of things in your pocket, or if you're like me, you can throw it in your hoodie pocket, wherever. You just attach them to the back of your pocket. So I feel like there's so many daily uses that you need for that. You're constantly like, oh man, if you're in your house, you need to cut something open. You're like, oh man, now I have to go to the kitchen and go grab it, or go out. If you're working on a car and need to cut some parts off, or whatever it is, need to cut zip tie off, you're like trying to look in a toolbox for something when you can already have it on you. Absolutely. Those are great points. Well, Hailie, it's been great talking with you today. And thanks for joining us. Everyone watching, don't leave just yet. Hailie's going to jump into the comments section and answer some of your questions directly in the comments. But Hailie, thank you again for joining us. And here's to a top 3 finish in the truck series this coming year. Thank you.